Pledge of Allegiance, and Senator Fenton, if you would lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And first order of business will be public hearing on Senate Bill 471. And invite the prime sponsors in to again introduce the bill for us. Just to let everybody know, I am going to, after I hear whatever public testimony is on 471, we're going to recess the hearing at the end till 9 o'clock next week. I promise for the sole purpose of allowing the prime sponsor to speak. As a professional courtesy to the senator, I agreed not to close the public hearing and give her an opportunity to speak. So after we take all the public testimony next week, at the end of it, I'll recess it till 9 o'clock next Wednesday, again, for the sole purpose of allowing the prime sponsor to speak, and then we'll close the public hearing. That's it. With you.
For the record, my name is Kevin Condict, Minority Caucus Director in the Senate. On behalf of Senator Altshuler, I introduce Senate Bill 471 relative to affordable housing investment fees.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Love that. We'll hear from Natch, if he's up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Nate Graves for the Business and Industry Association. Just want to put on the record, we are very much fans of affordable housing, but we do oppose this legislation. The reason for that really is that we don't, this legislation does not give parameters around how much this fee may be. And one of the things that you're going to hear from other speakers today, I'm going to call out Nick here, is some of the economics of development and how that functions and how important it is to make sure that any sort of additional cost for development is within the parameters of what is possible for projects to pencil out at. If the cost is too much, projects will not pencil, and therefore they will not get built, even if they are good projects. One of the other concerns that we have is that this is very possibly going to result in stranded money, because while we agree that any sort of money generated for affordable housing is best put to use by existing programs, CDFA, New Hampshire Housing, and local housing authorities, because they have a proven track record of working very well, and we're very supportive of them. One of the limitations in this bill is that the monies can only be used for investment in affordable housing within the municipality, and that's lines 14 and 15 on page 1. So if you have a scenario like Concord puts in place some sort of fee, collects a bunch of money, but an affordable housing project comes up in our neighboring community of Boscawen, which is a housing champion, there's no ability to access the money Concord has collected for that Boscawen project, even though that housing is more likely than not going to be serving a population within the greater capital region, and therefore alleviate pressure on the affordable housing market in Concord. Therefore, we don't think that the way this is structured is going to get you the results that you want, because there are probably going to be communities which see development someplace like, I'll just pick one, Hampton, for example. There's a big casino project. If they were to choose to put something in place, some sort of fee, they might collect that, but Hampton might not be the ideal location for residential development, never mind affordable residential development. So they're just going to have this money sitting there indefinitely, whereas it could be put to good use by any of these organizations somewhere else. But I do want to emphasize, again, I think the economics of this is very important, and there are people more qualified than I am to speak about that. But I'm certainly happy to take any questions the committee may have.
Questions on the committee? Senator Perkins Coker.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony, Nate. So do you, is there a structure where you could sort of envision this working where perhaps we did set sort of a uniform amount for the fee, or you seem to be suggesting some sort of regionality element to it might be more functional, like could these be held at the county level, for example, by the RPCs to sort of help offset
I mean,
planning
I think a
costs or something? Yep.
simple fix, again, generally not supportive of additional fees on development, but a simple fix here would be just kind of an automatic sending of this money to New Hampshire Housing, CDFA, however you want to break that out, without a geographic restriction. Because, I don't know the market like they do, but they do a lot of detailed analysis when projects come forward, and determine kind of the best use of that money. And if our overall goal is to increase housing supply within the state, a better option would be to allow the experts who are familiar with development throughout the state to put that money to best use.
Follow up if I may, sir. Thanks. And just from I know you have some background in municipal matters. From your perspective, does what's proposed differ from, say, for example, an impact fee?
Yeah, so it differs from an impact fee because an impact fee is calculated to relate to some sort of specific need of the municipality. So, for example, if you're going to do a development that's going to increase traffic, the impact fee for may be used for increasing the road, whether that's in geometric design standards, so paving an unpaved road, or whether that's widening the road, or whatever the case may be, to deal with that additional traffic. And of course, there are examples across the board for septic, water, etc. But so that's a very different use because there's no, I guess, impact for housing. There's either housing or there's not housing. The other thing I would point out is the difference. The difference is while there are kind of general goals to increase housing, particularly workforce and affordable housing throughout the state, and BEA does a calculation on that with the assistance of the regional planning commissions. There's no kind of set goal per municipality. So there's no state entity, there's no regional entity out there saying, hey, Concord, when you really need 1,000 more units over the course of the next decade, and we think 100 of those should be affordable housing, that's not how those calculations work.
Yep. Fair. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Further questions from the committee? I have one. On line 8 of the page of the bill on the first page, it uses a phrase I've never heard, and I'm hoping you can define it. What is inclusionary zoning ordinances?
Welcome, my friend.
So inclusionary zoning ordinances are, there's a specific statute on this. And basically what they are is when a development is proposed, some portion of that may be required, or not under our law, it's encouraged under our law to be affordable. So typically it'll be like 10%, for example. One of the problems we've seen in inclusionary zoning is it's really dependent on the market. So Portsmouth, New Hampshire just did a study. They have some incentives in place to encourage affordable housing development alongside market rate housing. And it turns out their incentives are not incentivizing anyone to do this. So they're looking at changing those. We've seen in Portland, Maine, that they, back, I think it was 2021, changed their, they had a specific requirement that in any project, previously it was 10% of those units had to be affordable. They bumped that up to 25, thinking that would increase development of affordable units. What we actually saw was the market's response was, we're just not going to do development because none of these projects pencil. So instead of getting any additional units, whether it's market rate or affordable, there were just none proposed. So it had the exact opposite effect. So this is a very complicated area that developers and local officials have to work together closely on to make sure that when affordable projects are proposed, or when projects are proposed, if they want affordable units, units that are deed restricted to fall within the affordable category, that the math is done in a way that it's actually possible, and that often requires assistance from organizations like New Hampshire Housing or CDFA.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Next up is Brody DeShays.
These chairs are weird. I feel bad for you guys. Thank you, senators, for taking my testimony this morning. It's a pleasure to be in front of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Brody DeShays, I represent the New Hampshire Municipal Association. So this was a request of the Municipal Association to Senator Altshuler to bring forward this bill. And the purpose of the bill, as you know, has already been alluded to, is for municipalities to be able to add to their innovative land use controls ordinances the ability to raise an affordable housing investment fee that would be levied upon new units of housing that do not meet affordability criteria for like workforce housing or other affordability requirements. These fees then would be retained locally, very similar. It's nearly the same exact process in statute as an impact fee, be retained locally and could only be expended to the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, Community Development Finance Authority, Housing Authority of the local municipality. That's fine, Senator.
Okay,
Or
you just owe Brody a coffee now.
or any nonprofit that basically, you know, helps invest in affordable housing. Again, it mirrors the impact fee statute and has nearly identical reporting requirements for public transparency. It also has, very similar to the impact fee statute, has an appeals process. So if someone feels as if this fee is too expensive or too onerous, or could be preventative to helping more affordable units or units in general being built in the municipality, there would be a way for a developer or builder or private landowner to say, you know, can you work with us so we can get this project done? We would be more open to uniformity on the fees. That is something that we'd be welcome to. We'd like to see some form of this eventually move forward. Our concerns from our members that we've heard is that there has been less funding from the state to support housing, and they want to find innovative ways to raise funding locally and be able to help new projects that come before their planning board chalk out. So that really is the goal of this bill. We wouldn't be open to municipalities who collect and retain this fee for it to be sent to other municipalities. It should be reinvested in the same municipalities who are trying to figure out this housing stock, who are assessing the fee, would likely be working with their regional planning commissions, who set estimates for how many housing units, affordable or market rate, should be built and over what timeline. So we're just trying to think of creative ways without state mandates to help municipalities generate the revenues and to work with nonprofit developers or other quasi-governmental organizations to get more affordable housing built. And I will answer any questions if the senators have any.
Senator Rebecca Perkins Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you, Brody, for your explanation. What problem exactly do you see these solving given their similarities to impact fees?
So what problem are you asking? What problem exactly?
Yeah.
What we see right now is there has been decreased funding for the Affordable Housing Trust in the state. And the Affordable Housing Trust, obviously, and there are people who are much more knowledgeable on it who, you know, can probably address this too. But to my understanding, it helps basically when a project doesn't fully chalk out, it basically helps supply funding to get it across the finish line. With less money from the state generated and being placed into those types of programs or funds, it would be helpful if a municipality could find a way without having to raise money from local property taxes to be able to help these projects chalk out and to also in some ways incentivize developers to build more affordable housing units that meet those criteria rather than market rate.
Thank you.
Question.
Senator Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. You know, looking through the bill, you know, we kind of heard about the stranded money, and that there may be a loophole where money could get lost or not spent through these CDFA grants. You know, I'm looking through this, and I don't see the language that prevents the municipality from spending this money through New Hampshire Housing or CDFA. I don't know
you see it differently, or?
How I see it is that this bill would just say if you collect these fees, you would have to expend it to those entities. I think the idea, the intent is that it would be for projects that happen in the municipality, but I think you do point out a legitimate point that nothing would prohibit them from expending this money on a more regional project.
Thank you.
Questions? I have one.
Yes.
Does this apply to even single-family dwellings that aren't affordable housing? A town could assess a fee to any house that's built in its community?
I think this allows the flexibility to do that, and we would be happy to draft additional language to make sure that it's more geared towards larger developments, multifamily dwellings, and not single-family dwellings.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Brody.
Thank you.
Next up is Phil from the Home Builders Association.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try not to repeat anything that anybody else has said so far, but the New Hampshire Home Builders Association is vehemently against anything that imposes a fee on building houses, of course. I'll just give you a couple little statistics on that. As we know, we have a significant shortage of housing in the state of New Hampshire, and that's due to a lack of supply at all levels, not just affordable housing. So as soon as you start imposing a fee on market rate housing, let's say, you're adding about anywhere from 20% on the low end up to 60% of that fee on top of the house. So let's say if your fee costs $100, you're now adding $120 to $160 onto the price of that house that gets directly placed on the consumer. And as we know, the median home price in New Hampshire right now is sitting around $535,000, and the median income for a household is in the low 110s. And so that means that is not, the median income is not even close to being able to afford the median home. So as soon as we start increasing the price of the homes, the regular market rate single family homes gets even more unattainable for your average everyday New Hampshire resident. And then of course that also affects our rental vacancy rate, which we know is incredibly low. Because now those folks that would normally be able to go and buy a house are now stuck renting, and you therefore don't have enough apartments to rent. So anything that has to do with fees on development, New Hampshire Home Builders is not going to be for. And I think that's it without repeating anything.
Questions from the committee? Senator
Senator
Sullivan.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Victoria.
Thank you for taking my question. Would it be fair to assess this as a penalty for builders that aren't meeting the criteria that's put forth, like for affordable housing?
Yes.
In Manchester, we've seen affordable housing that actually didn't even meet that criteria once it was built. But isn't this really a penalty?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. It would be a penalty for not fitting into these inclusionary zoning laws, which differ across municipalities.
And follow up? Many families starting out, or even elderly, will go into not single family homes so much, maybe a duplex or maybe something like that. Would this raise the cost of those for those families as well?
If it's in this situation, it would be new construction, but yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Chair. Would the proposal that was discussed with Brody, where these fees were limited to sort of multifamily or essentially commercial level development, do anything to change your opinion? Though I think
I
know
would
the
say
answer.
I would say probably not. I
Yeah.
would have to take that back and discuss it with our multifamily builders, but I would say probably not.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one, based on your conversation, I want to make sure I understand.
Okay.
So I guess if you have somebody who's currently in an affordable home, one of the things that opening up affordable home housing, right, is usually a trickle up process, right? Someone gets a better job, the wife, the wife goes back to work because the kids are old enough, whatever, and now there's enough money in the household, they can afford a bigger house. So they might go build a bigger house, but this would increase the cost of that to end up keeping them in their affordable house and not open up that opportunity for another new family that's stepping into the market.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Let's hear from Nick Taylor from the Housing Action of New Hampshire.
Good morning, Chairman Lang, members of the committee. I'm Nick Taylor. I'm the Director of Housing Action New Hampshire. We're a statewide pro-homes advocacy organization. And while we're very sympathetic to the intent behind this and the work of the sponsor, we also oppose this bill as currently written. We had talked at length, and a lot of our board members and governing council members are the affordable housing developers who would develop this type of housing. We talked at length about this proposal. There's a couple concerns that we have. Similarly to what Nate brought up around some of the stranded funds, this would potentially create these like small trust funds throughout the state, which, while maybe well-intentioned, if they each have $20,000 in them, aren't really enough to actually get a project built. And so the concern would be that, unlike an impact fee that may go to roads or things that are already within a municipality's budget, that they are just adding that on to what is already being spent, this would be a potentially situation where the difference between getting a project built and getting it not built is not like a $10,000 fee. Like, we're talking about the millions of dollars that we are major supporters of in the Affordable Housing Fund that provide those low interest loans and grants to make those projects work. The $10,000, $20,000 pieces are challenging. It's a little bit different in a bigger city like a Manchester or a Portsmouth or a Nashua, where you have the scale to actually have a very valuable local trust fund. But if you're a small community that maybe sees one multifamily project every couple years, your fund is not going to get big enough to really make a huge dent in this. And that speaks to that challenge of the local piece versus, using New Hampshire Housing or CDFA or some of these statewide entities. Secondly, on the sort of inclusionary zoning piece, while this is a slightly different take on sort of the mandatory unfunded version, we have seen in Portland, Maine, in Somerville, Massachusetts, out west, when we do put these sort of unfunded mandatory inclusionary zoning pieces on, you see less overall housing construction. And so I think while the intent is strong, the outcome doesn't really align in the data there, and you're creating more scarcity, which actually makes it harder for people to move out and drives rents up. We have seen, for members of the committee that are interested in pursuing this type of topic, Portland, Oregon has created a funded inclusionary zoning model, which is a lot like our 79E program, where the funding is not sort of state dollars that are offsetting the grant. They're using a property tax credit to make sure that you're holding the development harmless in terms of that penalty when it comes to a disincentive around the economics. So there are versions of this that can work, but when you're putting the financial penalty, we see a decrease in overall housing production. And so, again, while we're very sympathetic and supportive of the general concept of trying to get more affordable housing, we're challenged by this specific proposal.
Questions for Nick?
Yeah, thank you. Just to restate what you just said, I think one model that we've seen work is sort of property tax abatements or credits at the local level against multifamily development that sort of accomplishes a similar thing, but actually works.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm happy to send you some other follow-up if you need it. But Portland saw increased overall housing production because it was an incentive to do this type of housing. But yes, so that proposal has worked in other areas.
Thank you.
Seeing none? Thank you, Nick.
Great. Thank you.
Next up is Ms. McIntyre from the Hampshire Association of Realtors. She is our last speaker.
Good morning, I'm Joni McIntyre. I'm a broker here in Concord with Coldwell Banker J. Hampy Associates, and I'm the Vice Chair of Public Policy at New Hampshire Association of Realtors. As one of the speakers has said already today, first of all, we do appreciate the goal of this bill. However, as one of the speakers has said already, the median home price right now is $535,000 for 2025. What you might not realize is the cost to close that house has also increased appreciably, and that's because charges like transfer tax and insurance, title insurance, are based on a percentage of the selling price, and things like insurance are based on the value. So those actual closing costs become much greater. And we don't feel that any fee will help solve that affordability problem and will just increase those costs. There's no guardrails on this bill to say that it has to be in this price range. You know, this fee can be this much, and in the end, a town could possibly make those fees so high that, again, as many speakers have said already, no development will happen. Not just affordable, but none. And again, that just affects that affordability, and will move that 535 even higher. There will be a breaking point for people. It's just inevitable. Housing already supports affordability through the real estate transfer tax. The first 10 million of that already goes to the Affordable Housing Fund. It would be great if we could take some more of that money and apply that to Affordable Housing Fund. The other piece, as you mentioned, about renting, these larger rental units. What will happen is those rental units will bear the cost of that fee, and it will be transferred on to the renters who are already paying a lot of money and not able to save what they need to buy a new house. There's a property, there's a apartment complex right on Main Street in town, and I believe it's $2,800 for a 2-bedroom unit. I believe a studio is $1,900. And people living there can't save the money that they need to come to a closing with to buy. So the bill makes some housing more expensive in order to subsidize others. We believe the legislation has made great moves to tackle the affordability problem. Last year with the, I think 16 or so pro-housing bills, and we appreciate that. But because this bill is another fee on housing, we feel there's better ways, and ask that you oppose this as well.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Yeah, just one. I've asked this to some of the previous folks about the multifamily. So in many cases, multifamily development costs about 38 cents on the dollar versus single family homes for municipal infrastructure, for example, water and sewer infrastructure. So it is less expensive. In places where politically it's difficult to build new housing because the municipality may have hesitations about that infrastructure costs. I mean, is there a path where, you know, this does present some sort of political incentive to welcome housing into the community?
I don't see it. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the fees could be so high that it will, like I said, impact all of it, all of the development.
Follow-up. Would you believe Housing Champions contains money for that same program? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McIntyre, I was caught up making some notes when you were speaking, and this is simple. So you had mentioned the cost of closing costs are ever increasing, and that hurts the bottom line. Did you offer a percentage of where closing costs or a number where that's increasing?
Well, in transfer tax, the buyer pays $7.50 per thousand. So if that of the selling price, if that selling price continues to
Increases,
go up,
gotcha.
then there's that. I don't know what the number is, but with title insurance, and that's based on a percentage of the selling price. Regular homeowners insurance is based on the value. So those every time we see an increase, the consumer is being charged more at the closing. And there's financing that allows 3%, but those closing costs become untenable for a buyer.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you. So that's our last speaker on Senate Bill 471. I'm going to recess this public hearing until 9 a.m. 1/21/26, next Wednesday. We're moving on to the next bill. Next bill is Senate Bill 633. I'll open the public hearing on Senate Bill 633 and have the prime sponsor, Senator Waters, have a nice conversation with the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a little handout from Business New Hampshire I'll reference that I thought might be of interest to the committee. I'm Senator David Waters, District 4, here to introduce Senate Bill 633, establishing a voluntary surcharge program and fund for the Division of the Arts and State Council on the Arts. And before I start, Mr. Chairman, as a former House member, it is just awfully funny to come into this room and not see Steve Valancourt sitting right there in that corner with his coffee and his newspaper. But those are a long time ago. But that presence is still in this room.
Well, let's say it was a long time ago because I was in the House.
Yeah,
They did
I
it
remember.
that long
You
ago.
remember? Okay. Well, moving right along here. So I want to talk briefly. What this bill does is try to provide a way that we can have sustainable funding for the Arts Council and to allow individuals, as opposed to business, to make some kind of a contribution. And I will talk about the details of the bill in just a moment. But just for some context here, for committee members who did not serve on finance, that while the House had really pretty much cut the Arts Council and zeroed out the budget, we did come up with a plan, thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, in which we did fund the office for $150,000 and then provided a tax credit business for businesses who made contributions to the arts, which is great. I do think that what we could also provide is a rather more sustainable and not burden folks, so particularly with fundraising, that we could have an individual way for through his ticket surcharge to create funding voluntarily for those venues who wanted to do that. I've had a lot of conversation with arts organizations, and they did point out that it was complicated for the fundraising, that if they were asking their own donors to provide funding to their own organization, then also potentially the same donor being asked to give money for the tax credit, and that has created some complications for them. They also have suggested an alternative here. So, Mr. Chairman, I will talk about this bill, but then there's an alternative that has been suggested that I think might be more amenable to the committee. So, also, in terms of the impact of the arts on New Hampshire's economy, that's why I gave you this article. I don't think there's any argument over that. I'll just point to the last page here, where these are Business New Hampshire numbers from 2022. And of course, that was just coming out of COVID, so it's considerably larger now. But at that time, 21,000 jobs in the state, $3.4 billion, 3.4% of the New Hampshire's GDP were contributed. And just for the Monadnock region, the arts sector alone, 25 million activity in 2022. That's 521 jobs, 5.3 million in tax revenue. Northern Border Alliance pointed out the kind of amplifier effect of any jobs in this sector to create other jobs in the economy as well. So we all know this. This is something that we would like to provide more support, but the rest of this article shows about the vagaries of funding from the federal level and the state level over many years. So that's why I was looking for some kind of solution here. So what this bill does is it would allow, on a voluntary basis, arts organizations of a certain size to add a 50% surcharge to the ticket, and then the bill creates a fund and a mechanism for managing that fund that could be used for Arts Council and Division of Arts projects, authorized through MOUs and through approval of joint physical to use that fund. Now, in conversation with the arts organizations, with others about this bill, there was, generally a support for finding a way so individuals in a very easy way could provide some support for the organizations that and the kinds of arts that they appreciate. But also there is the question about having enough funding for the things that the Arts Council does that don't necessarily raise money. We have the Poetry Out Loud contest for all the students that occupies the State House at some point. The governor gives the Heritage Fellows and Arts honorees awards, and there are many other programs like that aside from the grants that could be provided from it. So the alternative, in talking with Sal Frizio, and there are several who couldn't make the hearing today, but these are the folks I've been talking with, suggested that maybe another way to go at this to avoid the notion that a lot of them feel the state should be providing more support for the arts anyways, but that aside, they want to avoid the notion of this appearing to be a new fee or potentially be called a basic kind of a sales tax on tickets. So a way to avoid that, which was suggested by Sal, the Capitol Center, was that why not have at checkout a box they could check out to donate $1 to the Arts Council. And that'd be a rather seamless way for that money to be brought forward and then transferred into the account that the bill would set up. And I think that has some real potential to allow people who may already be donated to an arts organization to support the arts generally around the state and provide needed funding for this group from those kinds of individual donations. So that's where I'm at, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your work and leadership on the arts. And you certainly know the value of a job connected to the arts, don't you? And anyways, I would hope I'd like to hear feedback from today, but I hope the committee would give me a week to further develop with the arts organizations that other option. And I want to also Ticketmaster, I've been in touch with about the original bill and, just what kinds of, some of the ways that this could be accomplished. And I would need about a week to do that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from the committee? Senator Perkins Coker.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. It sounds like you're working on some new language, but on line 10, I wanted to make sure, it seems like maybe we just need a little bit of a drafting change to clarify that it's the surcharge that's 50 cents per ticket and not the price of the ticket.
I made the same note.
Okay.
Yeah.
You basically, in the bill, the way you word it, says, as long as you provide a ticket that's less than 50 cents, you can charge the surcharge. That's the way the bill's written now.
Yeah.
Well, I do have my copy of my ticket to the Woodstock Festival. Let me know that it was $3.50 for 3 days of culture and music, but times have changed.
So, I guess I have one question
Yes.
myself, and that is, why, so Sal from the Capitol Center Arts, what's stopping him from putting that checkbox on the bottom now? And offering that to his patrons?
I think that it does raise some complications about that funding then from a nonprofit being donated from a nonprofit to such a fund as this, and whether or not that I think there's some question about bylaws of arts councils and so on, and then secondly, I think that what we do need in this bill is to establish that fund so that if, let's say that somebody wanted to do that anyways, I think we need a fund so that that money can appropriately be supervised and used by the Arts Council and a method that would be really relatively seamless so they could be collected from, what if there were 50 arts organizations that wanted to do that? So this would provide a way with administering that with appropriate oversight.
So just a comment, you do know that in HB2, when I established a tax credit program, we established a granite patron of the arts fund that allows to accept donations for grants to be able to be issued by the arts organization. So the fund already exists.
Yeah. Well, I think I could reference that. I'll look and see if that actually would be feasible for this, but I will look. But I thought that, because this was more based on individuals rather than a tax credit program for donations through that this would be potentially a way to do it. But I'll look into that too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
So I applaud your efforts here. It looks like you're still working on it a little bit. But what keeps the new people that are involved in New Hampshire Arts now from just having an agreement that says we're each going to take 50 cents off each ticket and put it into a fund that we're going to use to promote the arts within the state?
Thanks for your question. I think that there are real complications over the kind of law and bylaws for nonprofits to be able to then give money to another nonprofit and to raise money for another nonprofit. Because a lot of directors of these arts organizations are very explicitly said, you may not raise funds for other organizations, you only raise it for us. So this would be also a way to reduce bureaucratic. I mean, I think that once this programming is done at the point of sale, that you check that box, if the other dollar is taken off, going to be automatically put into a fund that then is transferred to, I mean, I think that makes it very, very simple and doesn't kind of complicate the functioning of the nonprofit.
Thank you very much.
But I'll, you know, I mean, this is what I've been involved in these organizations. I've been on the state council and, you know, other part of it. And so I'm familiar with this, but I think that there's a lot of ins and outs about how these function. And I think this is much cleaner. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Natch, our last speaker. Did you want to speak?
You had to go over to Granite Place.
Okay, great. Actually, I just realized he crossed off. He didn't want to speak, so.
And so it begins.
Yeah, exactly. The fight between Granite Place and the State House. Anybody else wish to speak on Senate Bill 633? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on Senate Bill 633. Move on to the next bill. Next up is Senate Bill 634. And I recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Prentice, who came in and then she stepped back out, maybe. Can you go see if she's up? Let me thank you.
I was so confused. It was a different room and a different cast.
It's cozy.
You find her?
Yes, she went back into the other committee.
Brody
It's okay.
let her astray. I saw.
I know. I thought we had time.
Brody, you're off on time.
I know.
We already blamed him.
I
So,
thought Mr. Graves had to run to Granite Place, so I thought he'd have some testimony.
so we'll get and open a public hearing on Senate Bill 634 and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Prentice, to introduce the bill and tell us what it's about.
Good morning, Ways and Means. I actually think this is the first time I've testified before you, maybe in 5 years. And this is my second bill that I'm introducing this today. So for the record, my name is Sue Prentice. I'm the state senator from District 5. I represent 15 communities, including the city of Lebanon, where I live, which is a regional hub. We're happy to be a regional hub and have folks stay, work, and play. But this is this municipal occupancy fee is something that we've been pursuing for years. They didn't make a direct ask of me. I just keep coming back with this as I see the costs increase for communities and trying to find non-tax, property tax related revenue to help offset that. So Senate Bill 634 enables New Hampshire municipalities to adopt a local municipal occupancy fee on room rentals that are subject to, now the city to be subject to approval by voters or by a local legislative body. The purpose of this fee is to establish a municipal capital improvement fund, a tourism support fund, or a revolving fund or other special revenue fund to offset the costs of tourism. And I don't like the word transient traffic, but it is the traffic that comes through from recreation and from business. And sometimes even folks that are there for medical stays to stay in, local establishments. And again, it is important to emphasize that this is a local option. So the communities that want to do it by the voters or by a local legislative body, like the City Council of Lebanon that I used to sit on, they could do that. Under this bill, municipalities can impose up to $2 per occupancy per 24-hour period. If there's a flat daily charge or percentage of the room price not to exceed $2. So that would be the fee. And this would apply to rentals, wouldn't apply to rentals that are $40 per night or less. And it may only be charged for up to 184 consecutive days. So we don't get into any of those short-term stay rentals that are happening. Enforcement is a tough word, but it mirrors existing municipal enforcement authority for ordinances if they were to put this in place. Revenue collected must be segregated from the general fund and may only be used in voter-approved or council-approved purposes such as municipal services for tourism, infrastructure, and visitor impacts. And one of the pieces, again, having been involved locally, is, we have Route 120 that runs up through and carries the majority of the traffic to the business corridor in Lebanon, as well as to, the state's either largest or second largest employer, which is Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and all of the patients that come there, which is great. But our infrastructure is constantly challenged by the way that our community operates. And I know other communities are in this position that serve as regional hubs. It doesn't mean that we don't want folks there. It's just we're looking for a way to, how do we bring more funding in to support the fire department, the ambulance service, the police department, or even the infrastructure on the that supports these roads. Many communities will actually pay for buses to get them to move traffic rather than put more cars on the road, but they're paying for that out of a general fund versus something that's dedicated. This would be an option. So this would take place upon passage, and I will just wrap by saying it's a dedicated local revenue for tourism and infrastructure. It's shared a cost between visitors and local residents. I think you all know that I have traveled and continue to travel for my full-time job, mostly in the off season. And 30 other states, including Florida and Texas, have something like this. It's not uncommon. I save all the bills I get from hotels when they have some type of, they'll call it a recreation or as a tourism fee. So it's not uncommon. This is support for economic development, flexibility and local control supporting, and ability, to offset the property taxes by creating this separate fund. So I'll close with that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And thank you.
Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Nice to see you, Senator.
Nice to see you.
So I have a question. What prohibits your town or any town from taking a portion of the meals and rooms tax and using it for this purpose?
So it's a great question. We do use meals and room tax, but we're maxed out on that. And we're appreciative for, all of these communities are appreciative for the revenue sharing that's been reinstated. But at the same time, with increasing costs, it's just not enough. So this would provide, we're seeing property taxes increase. I know in my own city, and they have not asked me to introduce this bill, but I introduced it for any community in the state that's in this position. My husband's on the city council, and this year we're considering a tax cap in our city because of the increasing costs. So I'm looking for ways that are not tax related to create this extra dollars to support these things. So meals and rooms tax the meals and rooms revenue sharing can go anywhere. This would be more dedicated. So thank you for the question. I just actually had a doctor from your district come and testify with me on a bill, so let's follow up on that. Okay. Thank you, Senator Sullivan.
Senator Fenton.
Thank you, and thank you for taking my question. So just to clarify, this is totally an opt-in program.
Totally.
Not a mandate whatsoever, and it's totally up to the municipality to decide if they want to do this or not.
That's correct. Either municipalities or the voters of the municipality, so local legislative body or the voters.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Senator McConkey.
Thank you, Senator. Always nice to be sitting across the table. I want to like this bill.
Yeah.
I have.
You can like it.
I have the town of Conway that's asking for something similar. But the town of Conway lost me last term because of language like this or other special revenue fund as authorized by the municipality. And I see that here. So we've enjoyed sending much greater money back to the town with meals and rooms tax. So I don't think that I'm here with you right now. And what I told the town of Conway, if their representatives brought this forward, I really needed to talk about a dedicated fund that goes to. And I also travel a bit, and it's not uncommon in every town I land, wherever I land, Burlington recently, which I suspect they would, but Burlington had a fee, and Texas and South Carolina and everywhere else. So I think this is, I think I'm not there yet, but I think with a little tuning, I think, and coming in on the next year when we're talking the budget, I'll probably be there with you at that point.
Thank you. May I? Senator McConkey. And I mean, I'd love to do this year. I can potentially wait till next year, but would you be open to a conversation about being a little more restrictive with the language? I have built this out, but would be willing to, to say, take out a special revenue fund to focus it more. Was that potentially a conversation? You don't have to commit to me today, but maybe we can talk about this.
I love a conversation without a commitment.
Correct. But it gets us, and if the chair is okay with not executing this immediately so we can have a conversation, that would be great.
I don't, being a new member sitting here, I'm not going to burden my chairman with that.
I will.
You and I will work together.
Thank you, Senator McConkey and Chair Lang. It's
Further
up to you.
questions? I have one. Did you know that Lebanon, since 2020, has seen 126% increase in the revenue sharing from rooms and meals from our existing tourism tax? You're already getting 126% more than you got in 2020 in 2025. So the state is giving more money. And is that any of that tourism dollars that we're sending back to the community being used for tourism problems?
Yes, but it's still not enough because money is being spent to pay for, we have municipal employees and we're covering retirement costs, our share in there, that although we've improved that, we still don't have enough there. When I was on the city council, we had a $383,000 bill come in when the state changed how they managed the retirement system. So we have other places where we're seeing revenue drop down and we're filling those holes, and we're thankful for the meals and rooms revenue sharing, but we're trying to create another way to offset this and level the property taxes. So even with that, it costs more in general to do this business. And I also, if I may, I hear this from my husband all the time, but I do remember when I was on the city council, councils and legislatures make choices at the time that they're in. And sometimes when you consider that, at the time that you're in, you're like, this is a good decision. And 10 years later, it wasn't a great decision. And I'm going to give you an example of why Lebanon is under such pressure right now. But other communities are there. We didn't do a CSO project when we should have. Now, it was before I was on the council. First night I was on the council, we had to sign a consent decree. It was $70 million on the city, okay, primarily on the users of sewer and water. But some of that had to be spread out over different infrastructure projects that were related to this. Imagine having to pay that bill. Okay, so there have been things that have come up that were not great decisions at the time that have impacted and created this. It's almost like when you buy a car and you're upside down because of the amount that you get, that you pay. It's not worth the value when, for what you're borrowing for it. There are these gaps that are happening to these municipalities. So I appreciate all that's come there, but it's still, we wouldn't be asking if we didn't have a need. And well, I wouldn't be asking, and I'm looking at all cities and towns that may want to make this choice. Senator Lang, thank you.
One more question.
No, yeah, yes, anything for you.
So during your testimony, you talked about other states that have occupancy fees in a municipality. Do you know if those states also share their existing tourism revenue with the towns?
I do not know, but I can. Hold on a second. Yeah, in Texas, local governments have this ability, but I don't know about the meals and rooms side of it. But they are sharing this and making it available for local governments. So I'd have to follow.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Chairman. So Senator Prentice, I know you, like I, were a municipal official. You built budgets. You were a mayor. So part of what we always had to build into our capital improvement plan and our budget was the fact that, we need to replace brick sidewalks. We need to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant. We need to make sure that we're accommodating trash service that's increased by our tourism season. And so while some of the revenue we got from the state was helpful, do you find that there's still an outsized impact that this bill would give municipalities more independence to plan for, budget for, and manage?
Thank you, Senator Perkins-Coie. That's why I'm here. As you listed out all of the things, when councils make choice, when local governments, either by the voters or the elected officials, make choices at the time that they're in, the impacts for later. Like you forgo fixing those sidewalks because you have to put the money into funding law enforcement officials from a public safety perspective. That's that need at that time. And then you end up with a gap in your budget. And how do you fix those sidewalks that people walk on? What about, I mean, people are most interested in, like, I hear from people all the time that just want their roads paved. And potholes are like a huge thing. So we make choices to move away from that while we're doing this. You know, CIPs for a number of years, you know, I look back on the city that I live in, we didn't collect impact fees during our biggest building boom. And those impact fees, which we now have in place, would have gone into offsetting capital improvement projects. Now they do. And that's a limited time, but we had to wait on that. I can't speak for all communities, but looking at mine, that's a significant hole that was created that we've had to flip the script on. So this is just one way to get at it. Thank you. I hope I answered your question. I tried.
Any further questions?
Thank you, sir.
Seeing none. Thank you, Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Senator Lang.
Next up is Brody DeShays. Yeah, the fan kicked on the vibrator off. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the rest of the committee for taking my testimony. Again, for the record, Brody DeShays of the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Senate Bill 634 represents a longstanding NHMA policy position that we've had for many years. I won't get into all the technical aspects of it because I think Senator Prentice did an excellent job of explaining how this is just a local option as adopted by the legislative body, so the voters in the municipality or in accordance with the charter, the voters in a city, to adopt the ability for the municipality to have a $2 occupancy fee with a cap on that fee at $40. So it can't be more than $40 for over a certain duration. As you're probably all well aware, municipalities may only assess fees and charges as permitted in state law. So there needs to be some kind of enabling legislation to allow for this local option. I think to answer a few of the questions that came up is Senator McConkey, we would be very open to this being in a very specific dedicated fund and what that fund is allowed to be expended on by the legislative body, the voters, or the governing body in a city. We do think, though, that Section 4 does kind of address some of your concerns because while Section 3 of the bill, lines 17 through 20, kind of say what kinds of funds you can place this into. Section 4 then places a limitation onto what you're allowed to expend those funds on from those specific municipal funds. I think there's been many previous public officials that have spoken to the benefits and the property tax relief provided this proposal. I think a benefit to the state is that there would be no ongoing state financial commitment if a municipality felt as if that they saw, due to increased tourism or the investments that they've made over multi-decades to build the infrastructure to support the tourism industry in New Hampshire, that this is a way to help them raise funds to deal with some of those costs, especially related to tourism or public safety related to tourism. So we stand in strong support of Senate Bill 634, and I would be happy to answer any questions should any of the senators have them.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Brody. When you hear from cities and towns about the way the room and meals taxes return now, is there feedback about the amount or the way that that's distributed that might be relevant to this allocation?
So our position has always been that the original commitment when the meals and rooms tax was originally established was a 40% share. The legislature has been generous and continuously increased the share from 20% to 30%, and there could be future increases, and we would advocate for those. We have no position specific on distribution because we don't take a position on legislation that could negatively impact some members and positively impact others. So as that distribution share is changed, there are winners and there are losers. There's a House bill actually I'll be going to the hearing today to watch because some of you have municipalities that could be greatly benefited and greatly negatively impacted by changes to distributions. What I would say is that as Meals and Rooms revenues increase, that is showing that New Hampshire is a desirable destination for people to want a vacation in. We've seen an increase in tourists. As more tourists are coming to our state, And as there's a larger impact on public infrastructure and public safety costs, this is an increased cost of the municipality, and we're unsure if the revenues are fully able to cover all the costs that the municipalities are expected to take on. Additionally, other state aid has also decreased over the last few decades from the state, which has created financial downward pressure, especially during inflationary periods like we saw within the last few years. So while we're very, very appreciative of the legislature for increasing the meals and room revenue sharing, there are other places where we could be making dedicated and targeted investments that help support the tourism industry and property taxpayers and municipalities and the infrastructure that they have to upkeep.
Sorry, one more question, if I may. Does giving municipalities the independence to collect some additional revenue allow them to spend their money more smartly rather than sort of reacting to each and every crisis that comes up, which gets expensive?
Thank you for the question, Senator. We believe that with some kind of municipal self-determination where they're able to craft more locally tailored policies and have that optionality to address fiscal needs is important. We also, all of our members, the folks who govern the municipalities are also property taxpayers, and they have to be accountable to the voters and the property taxpayers. So they have an invested interest in spending money wisely and ensuring that it's targeted investments and being accountable to the voters. And ultimately, something like this could help them deal with those fiscal pressures and be more accountable to voters and their expectations.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I've got one.
Yes, Senator.
So statewide, the number's 104%. The amount
Yes.
of money that's increased from 2020 to 2025. We've doubled the money going to municipalities on average. Don't you think that it's incumbent on the locals to decide where that money goes? And if they have an issue with tourism, they could set locally already a designated amount of that rooms and meals tax that comes directly from tourism aside to deal with tourism issues. Isn't that already the case? They could do that if they wanted to.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think that's a good point. I think many of our members are taking additional state aid that they're receiving, like meals and rooms tax revenue, or when they need to increase property tax to address and making targeted investments towards those types of increased needs. I think needs are just really outpacing the ability to raise revenues. As we can hear, property taxpayers, they're seeing their bills continue to increase as inflation continues to increase too. We view this as a creative way for some municipalities to say, let's decrease that burden some. We are seeing these increased needs. We are seeing that they're outpacing, the ability to state to increase its aid to municipalities or the ability to raise more revenues from property taxpayers. And ideally, they could do an occupancy fee that would help be more of a targeted way of dealing with these increased needs and costs.
Senator McConkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and perhaps you were
You might
already.
turn your microphone.
Turn your mic on. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roy, thank you for being here. I apologize for the informality. You and I have known each other for years.
That's okay, Senator.
So my understanding in trying to work through this for my district, and like I said, I would rather be tackling this next year in the budget. But my understanding, one of the issues with some of our towns in our area, is that chains, one holding owns several properties, and the reporting to meals and rooms tax at this point in time is to pull all of those together and create one payment going out. So I guess what I would like you to work on, or we for our consideration, is that if we get to a point, I don't want to give hope that it's happening in this next couple days, but if we get to a point that we have a vehicle that we allow a town to vote to add this onto it, how would that collection, how would that oversight be, that if it was a $2 fee that was added to a night's stay, and I am a chain operator, I have several in my area that own many places, how will that money make its way to the town? I don't know if that's better for a question for you, Mr. Chairman, or to Brody.
We would be more than happy to work with the committee on whether it's this proposal or future proposals, or we've also heard other ideas from senators on how to deal with this issue that are creative that would be welcomed. I do think that most of what you described might be done through rules with DRA. So, maybe it's something where we need to have a conversation with DRA about how would that rulemaking process work or how would it look. So, but definitely, we want to be solutions based. So we're definitely more than willing to work with you and any other senators to find solutions to this problem.
Thank you.
I just have one last question.
Of course.
These hospitality businesses already pay property taxes within your communities?
Correct.
Thank you. So, any other questions for Brody? Seeing them?
Thank you,
Brody.
senators.
Next up is Ms. McIntyre of the New Hampshire Realtors Association.
Hello again. I'm Joni McIntyre. I'm a realtor here in Concord with Coldwell Banker J. Hampy Associates, and I'm Vice Chair of Public Policy at New Hampshire Association of Realtors. The realtors oppose Bill 634 that will allow for $2 per 24 hours. Our first concern is administrative costs, how that will work for 25,000 hours. Or 25,000 nights, I'm sorry, that would be a collection of $50,000. My concern is that would not even cover the cost of administering that. Will the municipalities come back and say, we need some more money. We need it to be $3 or $4. So that's one of our major concerns. Property owners already pay room and meals tax for overnight stays. And fortunately, if they do those overnight stays on platforms like Airbnb or VRBO, the platform takes care of the payment of the room and meal and room tax, which this does not have any. There's nothing that puts that in there. For it to get paid. And because there isn't a platform or some way to make sure it's paid, some property owners will pay it and maybe their neighbor won't pay it. There'll be really no way of checking on compliance on that. Everyone who owns property already pays, as you said, property tax. They pay real estate tax when they buy the house, possibly impact fees if it's a new property. Also, keep in mind, short-term rentals are not just vacationers. Sometimes they're visiting nurses, sometimes they're visiting professors who are teaching at, say, Franklin Pierce. They are also families who have sold their house and looking for that short interim time till they purchase their new house. It's important for us, and it's a important and a very difficult thing for buyers. The sellers don't like to see a home sale contingency. So they like to know that those buyers have already bought their house and they're just waiting to move in. I already mentioned that. So for all those reasons, we're against this bill.
Questions, Senator Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question.
Yeah.
So I see this as maybe backfiring and communities shooting themselves in the foot, especially since it's voluntary. My family has made a conscious decision to avoid hotels that we historically love, but because the resort fees went up, they added parking fees, and it became to a point like you look at the price of the hotel and it's actually not the price of the room for the night. Adding another fee line on this, wouldn't that maybe hurt that community, and then people would go to the I guess that's a free market thing. If they want to do that, they can shoot themselves in the foot, but I see this actually hurting the communities that it's intended to help.
Yeah,
agree?
exactly. Yeah, I do agree. Yes.
Further questions? Senator Perkins-Cook?
As an alternative way for municipalities to collect revenue, ultimately, isn't this a pathway to lowering property taxes on homeowners and therefore something that would actually make homeowning more attractive in many places?
If the administrative costs don't eat up all of that, I don't know. Like, I know in Warner, there was a big outcry that that they, they wanted to do away with short-term rentals. And when they actually looked into it, there were only 2 properties in the town who were doing short-term rentals. And so, I don't, to make sure you're checking all of that, $2 per 24 hours, I don't think is going to cover in many cases. I'm sure in your area that's different.
It'd be different in our area. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our last speaker is Mr. McEachran, Mayor of Portsmouth.
Did you sign up?
Oh, what was your name? Oh, you didn't check that you were speaking. You just said you were opposed. So I'll call Heidi up afterwards. Go ahead, Mayor, you can come up. We put readers in the back, yeah, cheaters.
Thank you very much. For the record, name is Dago McEachran, the mayor of Portsmouth. Chairman Lang and members of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, I'm here speaking in favor of Senate Bill 634, knowing that it may not pass this session. That does not make the issue any less real. Across New Hampshire, residential property values have risen faster than commercial values. And communities like Portsmouth, that shift has moved the tax burden away from hotels and onto residents, even as out-of-state visitors continue to rely heavily on local police, fire, emergency, and public works services. This is not a local spending problem. Portsmouth has grown its municipal budget more slowly than the state budget this legislature has passed. Yet during our most recent revaluation, many homeowners experience assessment increases to the 50 to 60%. The consequences are already visible. In Hampton, residents are suing their town over property valuations. When people believe the system protects those from away more than those who live here and pay taxes year-round, trust breaks down. At the same time, municipalities are absorbing cost growth they do not control. Health insurance costs for teachers and municipal employees are rising many times faster than inflation. The legislature continues to downshift responsibility while refusing to provide cities and towns with meaningful tools to reduce over-reliance on the property tax. SB 634 is a modest, voluntary tool. It does not mandate a fee. It simply allows communities to better align the costs of services with those who use them. If this committee chooses not to act, then it should be prepared to explain to homeowners why restraint at the local level is not enough, why the burden continues to shift onto residents, and why those who live here year-round are expected to carry the costs created by those who do not. I will take any questions that you might have.
Questions from the committee? Senator Perkins Coker.
Thank you, Mayor McEachran. As you have and I have built municipal budgets in Portsmouth, do you see this as a way to address some of the residents' concerns over growth in tourism and ultimately the growth in their local property taxes?
Sure. I mean, I don't think this is a Portsmouth problem. There's many communities that saw an influx of people after COVID. We're a great place to live, but that's driven up the residential much faster than commercial. So, certainly I think Senator Lang, you had asked, do we pay property taxes? They do, but they pay less as a percentage now than they did before COVID. That is a problem. This would help address that problem. It would decouple it from the value of your property, and it would be focused on the services. I also will take the opportunity to say, while we do appreciate the costs going up, from or the share going up, that seems like kind of legislative math. If you cut it to 20% from 40%, and then you increase it year after year and still not get back to 40%, it's tough to pat yourself on the back when we're talking about historically, this is not even where it was when it passed. So at the same time, we've lost the ability to have retirement funds. That was a 7% one time that didn't get back into the budget. That meant we had to come up with all those things. And when we're talking about the services that this is doing, it's not going to it would be great, sure, tourism. I'm going to let the hotels focus on tourism. I'm going to let those who are trying to get people into the state focus on that. What I need in Portsmouth is to pay our cops, to pay our firemen, to pay those that are driving the EMS, talk about the ladder trucks. Their costs are going up year after year because of healthcare costs, because of cost of living adjustments that we're trying to compete with people all over the state. That's the problem that we're trying to focus on here. And the fact that we're talking about, if we could, better balance the budget. COLA's at 3% because of inflation now. Healthcare costs are going up. We're not even talking about teachers, but they're set to go up 26% this year in terms of healthcare costs. There's a real problem, and that's being exacerbated by the fact that we're shifting all of the property. The value is on the residential, not on the commercial.
I could ask a follow-up. Mayor, do you happen to have the figure of what this sort of 104% increase return back to Portsmouth represents inside your budget?
Yeah, I think it was 700,000. And that's, I'm not here to complain about how you divvy up, the percentages. I think it's a little weird that, when we're talking about paying our county tax, that's based on property valuation. And we're talking about getting the rooms and meals, that's talking about, the population. We get it. We're part of a state. We're trying to make the state as good as we can. We know our part in that is sending the $40 to $50 million that we do from Portsmouth into the coffers and have that distributed around the rest of the state. That's totally fine. But it's not near enough of what the cost of the police and fire that we're trying to, that we need to have for the amount of tourism that we're having in the state, into Portsmouth specifically.
Thank you. And just one last question, if I can, Chair.
Yep, you may.
One of the sort of points that's been brought up this morning is that with a sort of figurative tightening of the belt at the local level, that, some of these funds would go farther. In your experience building a budget at the municipal level, does that ring true to you, or are you
I would like, the hardest part is folks think that like, hey, the cost of government just for doing what we say, like, why are my taxes going up? Totally valid question. Last year, we held it to below inflation when you don't count out of districts. Out of district placements accounted for, we got to 2.49%. Out of districts added another 2% on that, $2 million. That's a lot of money. So folks are rightly, wondering why. But when we're talking about, retaining police officers, that's, we get to compete all across New Hampshire. They can go down to Mass and make more money. Like, it's a problem when we're trying to compete with Dover. We just still don't have the highest paid cops. I think that might be Concord or Dover. But to be able to keep pace and keep those people, because to lose a cop and then retrain them is $140,000. That's a lot of money that we have to come back in and bring. We have to teach them about the community, et cetera. So when we're talking about building a budget, we bought out 15 contracts of teachers to help them retire faster. That means we're cutting 15, teachers out of the high school. You're going to hear that across the state this year. You're going to hear that in Merrimack when, the healthcare costs are going up. They're going to have to cut teachers there too. It's not looking for, hey, we want to do this other thing. The first, we got just to give you an example, we got a grant, was awarded a grant yesterday. We're not going to take that grant unless we can apply it to positions that we already have, earmarked in the budget, because we know in 2 years that grant's going to be gone and we're not going to be able to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? So Mayor, I just have a couple. So would it surprise you to know that, again, for Portsmouth, the increase annually for the rooms and meals went up $1.19 million from 2020?
Yeah, I know that.
You're getting over $1 million more.
I take my,
in rooms and meals revenue sharing.
Yeah, I usually just look at the state and say, is it going up or down? And it's gone down the last 2 years. So when I look at the amount of money coming from the state, I don't break it out every line item. I say the state gave us $4 million last year. This year they gave us $2 million. And so, I'm not looking at all the line items that the state's doing. And, from the budget, nobody in Portsmouth is looking at your budget and saying, hey, they're increasing this, that's okay, that they decreased or cut completely the 7% to retirements, that you didn't pass in this last budget. So I'm not looking at specific line items. I'm looking at whether or not the state is giving us more money or less money. And last year it was less money.
My last question is, do you agree with Governor Melvin Thompson's statement that low tax is a result of low spending?
I do.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, Heidi, I apologize. I checked the box for you, and come on up and speak.
That was my fault. I'm sorry. I didn't have my glasses on. It sucks getting old. So good morning, thank you. This is very cozy. I sort of like this. So I'm Heidi Melbrand. I own and operate Pleasant View Bed and Breakfast up in Bristol. I'm also the president of the Lakes Region Bed and Breakfast Association. I am the president of the New Hampshire Bed and Breakfast Association, and I am the vice chair of lodging for the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. I wear many hats. I'm here to speak against SB 634. And before I get into it, I just want to say I've been coming down to Concord. I've lost count the number of times I've had to come down to testify against this bill. So when I'm done, I'm putting an invoice in for my time and gas money. Okay? And I also want to know when you guys are going to learn to say no. No means no. My business sits in the beautiful Newfound Lake region, and we rely heavily on tourists. Legitimate lodging, we already collect 8.5% meals and rooms tax. And for the record, I'm the only game in town. I'm the only legitimate lodging bed and breakfast in the town of Bristol. Adding another fee to my guests is going to deter them from staying and reduce my business. When I travel, nothing frustrates me more than seeing my bill from a lodging facility that includes a city tax, occupancy tax, state tax, and an airport tax if I happen to stay near one. Legitimate's already undermined by Airbnb, VRBO, and other online booking companies, and also real estate rental companies who do and can work outside state regs. Are the towns going to be required to collect the $2 per room per night from those online bookings? And if so, I mean, if they do rent a lot of rooms. What upsets me about this bill is that it's discriminatory and prejudicial. Why are you only going after lodging? Why not require restaurants, gas stations, retail shops? Every business out there is associated with the increase in tourism and transient traffic. And also at my place of business, we also have an adjacent brew pub. We get a lot of people coming in there to drink. So can we tax my husband's business too for this? And why should my business, my lodging business, be responsible funding towns that are incompetent in their budgeting? I see that these revenues collected are intended to be used to augment funding for the cost of municipal services associated with the increase in tourism and transient traffic. Again, why should my business be the only one responsible to help fund this budget line? Do people just magically drop into my bed and breakfast from the sky and not go anywhere? So you're going to want to tax one business for the benefit of a city's bottom line. And it was mentioned before, how is it going to be enforced? Does it give the state to audit me to make sure I'm giving my town the $2 per room? Big Brother's truly watching me. And administrative costs to the town, how are they going to be paid? And for this bill to go into effect, towns need to vote on it. And if you live in the town of Bristol, you would shudder too. I know how people in my town think, and they'll view this as a property tax reduction, and it's going to get voted in without regard to its long-term consequences. Again, I'm the only legitimate lodging in the town of Bristol. I have 7 rooms. Do the math. Even if I rented every single room every single night, it still wouldn't help. Basically, this bill is being proposed by larger cities as a money grab, and the amount that small towns collect is inconsequential. It's going to put an additional burden on me, the town, and my fellow legitimate lodging partners to collect and remit yet another tax. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Milbrand?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your testimony, and thanks for building a small business in New Hampshire. Those are important. In order for this to apply to you, just as a technical point, your municipality would have to vote to adopt
I know
this.
that.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
No,
Thank you.
I understand that. And then I said, I know how my people in my town think, that they will see it as a property tax reduction and they're going to vote it in right away. And then all that burden's going to shift on me. If you just look, Newfound Lake is surrounded by 4 towns.
Mhm.
There's only 2 other legitimate lodging places around the Newfound area. So there'll be 3 of us if they all voted it in. But everybody else up there, they're second homeowners and they use them as Airbnbs or VRBOs. Are you going to be going after them to collect that? Nowhere in the bill does it say that. Nowhere in the bill. And there's a ton of Airbnbs and VRBOs, not only in the Newfound Lake region, all over the state. I remember sitting in on a bill a couple years ago where It's eluding me, but somebody actually came right out and said that they encourage people to rent their houses as Airbnbs to give them a tax break. Well, what am I doing then with my business? I'm not getting a tax break. My taxes are astronomical.
Thank you.
Senator McConkey.
Thank you. Thank you for the upgrade.
I have to get that. I spent 8 years saying representative, and I gotta say.
Capital budget, when you and Senator Pearl show up, we have a habit of interposing your names. Thank you for being here. I like your business. I like your business model. Bed and breakfast. What was breakfast this morning at the house?
I don't know. I left. My husband was serving, so I left it up to him. God only knows. I said, "Here are the eggs."
I appreciate your testimony. I made note of maybe a room threshold might be something, a cost might be something. Your testimony wasn't lost on me. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, that's the last speaker who signed up. There was one other person, Cheryl Reardon from the White Mountain Attractions, signed in and opposed.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If there's no other purposes wishing to speak, we will close the public hearing on Senate Bill 634. And we'll move on to Senate Bill 636. I recognize Senator Fenton to introduce the bill.
Oh. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, for the record, I am Senator Donovan Fenton. I represent District 10, and I am here to introduce Senate Bill 636. 636 is designed to provide targeted and responsible relief to New Hampshire small businesses that are facing increased costs as a result of federal tariffs that are entirely outside their control. These tariff-related cost increases are real, documented, and disproportionately impact small manufacturers and locally owned operating businesses that lack the scale or leverage to absorb or pass along sudden cost spikes. The goal of this bill is very simple. I'll keep it very simple. I'm sure you all have read the bill. Help New Hampshire small businesses stay competitive, keep people employed, and continue operating here at home. Now, as you can see, there is an amendment. I hope you all got that in advance, right? You should have it. No. Oh, okay. It's on you. I thought you emailed them. Yeah. But I got copies just in case. Be prepared, right?
Please.
Yes. Okay. I was like, am I losing it? I could be.
Thank you for being prepared, John.
It's just not sure what I'm prepared for. So you should have a copy of the amendment. I apologize if it wasn't given to you in advance. I was under the impression it was. But as you can see, we had a hiccup with OLS getting this drafted. We moved kind of fast and furious when we were drafting these bills, and some wires got crossed. And I'm sure you can see the Department of Revenue's raised concerns in the original bill. So this amendment fixes everything that we should have had in the original bill. It strengthens it, narrows its scope, and improves its administration. So to clarify what the amendment does, it creates a single clear tax credit. So as introduced, the bill originally had parallel credits in both the BET and the BPT, and that structure does not make any sense whatsoever. So the amended bill establishes one primary tax credit under the BET, with any unused portion allowed to flow to the BPT, and that provides clarity, prevents duplication, aligns with administration as well of the credits. It also narrows the eligibility to true New Hampshire operating businesses. So the amendment tightens the definition of small business, where DRA had an issue in the fiscal note, as you can see, to ensure the credit reaches businesses it's intended to help with, which is, businesses organized or domiciled in New Hampshire. They must have a place of business in the state, and they must maintain New Hampshire payroll, and passive rental real estate entities are excluded. It also prevents abuse through entity splitting, which was another concern of DRA. It adds safeguards to prevent controlled or commonly owned entities from breaking into smaller pieces to claim multiple credits. So it has controlled groups treated as a single taxpayer for purposes of the tax cap. And the 7,500 limitation applies once per operating business, not per entity shell. So it ensures fairness, protects the integrity of the program as well. It also clarifies application timing and administration. So it creates, amendment clarifies credits applied to the tax year in which the tariff costs were incurred. Application timing does not shift for the applicable tax year. And the department has clear authority to manage documentation, proration under the cap, and the audits. So it resolves any administration uncertainty and avoids unnecessary returns or extensions or confusions for the taxpayers. So to conclude, that was a lot, so I apologize. It's been a long day. So to conclude, at this core, this bill has one simple purpose, really. It's to keep small businesses afloat in the face of the cost they did not create or control. I own a small business, and in the past, we've always had clear guidelines from federal policy on what tariffs are happening, what's happening at the federal level, and there's not a lot of clear policy or explanation as to what's happening. And small businesses need clarification, they need stability, and that's what this bill offers. If we don't do anything, we're not just squeezing margins here, we're going to force difficult decisions about layoffs, price increases, whether business can continue operating in New Hampshire. We talked about shooting businesses in the foot. We don't have a choice as small businesses but to raise prices because of tariffs. And that's not an option of shooting in the foot. It's shooting New Hampshire in the foot, because once we lose these small manufacturing businesses, these small businesses, we don't easily get them back. So I think a small fiscal note of $8 million to protect our small businesses, help them stay afloat, help them keep people employed here in New Hampshire is well worth it. And I am happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions from the committee? I just have one. I'm trying to struggle with the definition you have of tariff-related costs and how a small business would be able to classify that, especially if they're not a direct importer. They're going through somebody else to buy a product for their store or for something else. And how are they going to identify what the tariff-related costs are for them? It's in line 31. It says means increased costs of goods, inputs, or supplies directly attributable to federal tariffs imposed by, and goes into the federal act that imposes tariffs. So how would a small business possibly get from its supplier to be able to be eligible for this tax credit? What is the direct cost of tariffs related? And would that create an administrative nightmare for these businesses?
So these are ledgers we already keep as small businesses. I'm sure, Senator Lang, I think you owned a small business at one point. You wear many, many different hats, so I got to keep track of them all. So you own a small business. These are ledgers we already keep. These are documented expenses we already keep. These are things we report already. So when a manufacturer, let's say your supplier has increased X costs, you have to know why they're increasing X costs, or you try and shift suppliers. And if all these suppliers are increasing costs because of tariffs, that's well documented. So I think that's how you can figure it out.
So again, I'm gonna try to get to this. So my yoga studio, when I had it,
The yoga studio. I knew
was
something.
buying mats for my students, and the mats went up $2 per mat. How would I be able to document? Because I'm just buying from some big supplier who increased their costs for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. How do I document that in order to have that my yoga studio eligible for this tariff?
So under this bill, it gives rules and administration to the DRA. And I think I put in here, I'm just trying to find the line. Make sure you have it. I thought I put in here. Yeah, my size weird. Here we are.
My concern is just mixed cost increases in products that are due to
Oh, it might be in the original
inflationary
bill.
pressure,
Apologies.
due to interest costs, whatever, that get merged in somehow into a cost of a product going up, and how a business owner is going to.
So here you go. I'm sorry. It was in the original bill, line 20. So tariff-related costs means increased costs of goods, inputs, or supplies directly attributed to federal tariffs imposed under the harmonized tariff schedule of the United States as evidenced by invoices, tariff classification codes, or supplier certifications acceptable to the Department of Revenue Administration. That is line 20 on page 2. I apologize if we were just looking at the amendment.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you all.
Next up is Jody.
So I want to make sure that I'm here to sort of speak on behalf of for both this proposal and your proposal. So I don't know if I should sit here now.
Well, right now,
Just
we're
go
having to
for it.
talk about 636.
This, which I do know that, and
right,
yeah.
So we're going to speak to that bill.
Okay.
And then Lauren will be our last speaker
That sounds
over at DRA, from DRA.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. My civic duties have mostly been behind the counter at my store, G. Willikers Books and Toys in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I'm a second generation owner, a business that my mom and dad started in 1978. So we're 47 years old. I've been solidly with both feet on the ground in the store for 27 years. And very recently, in the past 5 years, have become at the helm of our store. So I'm on a huge learning curve. So this situation right here is fairly overwhelming for me. So bear with me as I walk through it with you. I'm glad that I got to sit through that conversation, because that was one of the concerns I had as I went out the door today, thinking about I just experienced the tariffs. They were introduced in February, where there was sort of the warning, here they come. In April, companies started sending out emails and letters letting us know how they're handling it. And what was interesting about that is some were incredibly transparent. You're going to see it in a cost of increase across products, individual products. And some of them said there will be a line item on the bottom. And others, costs were increased with some and not with others. But when they increased, we had no idea if it was related to tariffs or other issues. Already we saw that with COVID, because getting parts and getting, for toys, there's parts from all kinds of places. And so it already was complicated trying to follow how that was all happening. Just to give you I'm part of a local retailers association through the chamber, where we talk monthly about how to support each other and what the reality is on the ground. There's a lot of concern over the rising costs due to tariffs. I'm also part of ASTRA, which is the Association for Specialty Toy Retailers. And so I followed up on some of what they're doing. They're very active in trying to advocate for small businesses when it comes to the tariffs. The other thing, bear with me, I just lost my train of thought. Well, let me go on until I figure that out. So for example, one of my companies is Douglas Toys, and in Keene, New Hampshire. And they, what they decided to do was take, a cost of $7.15 and raise it to $7.20, $7.25. And we've seen that incrementally going up twice during the period of time that tariffs were introduced. So, and it was interesting because I just wanted to share a quote from the CEO of that company about this. He said, production in the world moved to countries where the labor cost was less expensive, understandably, but these cost savings are getting squished by tariffs, which are currently adding 145% tax on every toy imported from China. Like Douglas Company, all of our manufacturers from Canada and overseas the majority of them have applied increases due to the tariffs. And as I said earlier, many of them have been very transparent, and it's very clear what we're paying for and why. And others have not been. It's basically, appeared on our invoices in two different ways. So we had to determine, what are we going to do? We're old school. We started in 1978. You buy something for $5, you sell it for $10. That's changed over the course of those years. I don't know, probably even 15 years ago, it was you double plus $1 to help with, costs of shipping. And I don't even know what the standard rate is, because, we're working pretty hard. And all of this happened right as we were actually having to make fourth quarter decisions about what we buy, how much we buy. So some of the ways, so I'll give you an example. I talked with my bookkeeper yesterday, because she knows a lot more. Her brain works in this way more than mine. But she said in 2024, our profit margin was 49.5%. So for every dollar, 50.5 cents was spent for every dollar on that product. In 2025, our profit margin was 48.33%. That amounts to just over, which for every dollar, 51.67 cents was spent to buy every product. So it seems like a small increase. But what that resulted in is a 2.3% increase in costs compared to 2024. And for us, for what our sales volume per year is that added $8,600 in actual dollars. So in terms of what we had to spend more for the same product last year. For my business, that is not as hard as it is for other businesses, because in 1982, my parents bought our building and we don't have rent. We pay my mother just here, you should be earning something. And so my concern is, whereas this year we were able to manage it, we didn't have to fire anybody, but come, this time of year now, it's me running the store behind the counter with, 1 or 2 people, and, not fulfilling shifts as I would have wished. So that's that part. And again, this isn't as linear as I'd like it to be. But as a result, we had to buy more conservatively. I kept a constant check on how much do we have in stock comparatively to last year. It was $20,000 less than we had on hand since last year. The store looks very empty right now, which means it's a good thing, but I would have liked to have a little bit more to show people when they come this time of year. So we also, the other thing that happened, so our manufacturers, they're not the big guys, some of them are, but most of them really aren't. They're small businesses like us, I guess maybe medium-sized businesses. And so they're floundering and trying to figure out how to do this. And they've been very transparent about that too, just like they're apologetic. They're trying to figure this out, They have had to have layoffs, as well as figuring out, what they're going to be. There's been shipping delays as a result of some of where the tariffs were unveiled and then rescinded. And then, there was a lot of shifting going on. So I think there was a lot of confusion. And then, on my end, once we hit the fourth quarter, you just got to kind of get your feet on the ground and go with it. And so that's why I was asked, and I'm grateful to be here to address both ways that you all are trying to support the small businesses. And I'm not sure which one, or if both, or, but I will say, in terms of qualifying for, do we qualify? I'd have to go back through some we keep all of our invoices, obviously, but I'd have to do a lot of math around what from what company, it depends on what we would need to claim and how. I think that, we got that support during COVID with the PPP loans. We had a SCORE representative walk us through that, but without him, it would have been really very, very challenging. And I could see that happening in the future. That's a wonderful organization, by the way. So I guess I'm here to just, speak out for the small businesses in my community and beyond, and those that are less fortunate than G. Willikers who have, don't have to pay the kinds of rents that are happening here in the town. So,
Willing to take questions?
Yes, I am.
Quick question. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. I know
Yes.
I know what it's like to leave your business to
Yeah.
come here. I do it
Yeah.
quite often, so thanks for being here. Just curious, as a small business owner, are you getting guidance from the federal government on these tariffs, or from the state of New Hampshire at all, on how this is affecting your small business, or are you just hearing it from the news?
Just hearing it from the news. Yeah, there's been no outreach at all that I know of, through emails or letters or people calling us to see how we're faring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here, Jody.
Yes.
I just want to kind of draw out a couple pieces from your testimony that have been your experience. So obviously small businesses are super important employers. They're bedrocks of our community. They represent a life's work. You mentioned a little bit about sort of like profit margins and decreased inventory for you. So far that represents sort of a steady state in terms of the number of employees, but maybe not as many wages going out the door has
Right.
been an impact so far.
Yes.
On your business. Okay. And then secondly, have you seen You talked a lot about sort of supply chain prices. Have you seen any decrease in, for example, foot traffic that's been rumored in the Seacoast from decreased Canadian tourism? Could you talk a little bit about
Absolutely. I wish we had a ticker on our door too, although sometimes people just come in to use our bathroom, so it would be skewed. It's been interesting, definitely a decrease in the Canadian tourists. And it's been interesting in talking to the ones that do come through the door. One conversation in particular, it was striking to me because they said, you know, we're not like all Canadians. We want to be here. We love your country. But there's a lot of division there when it comes to the perspective of what's happening to them. So I would say there has been a decrease. And I know, you know, in our conversations we call it Talk Shop, when we meet with the chamber and our fellow retailers, that not only in our stores, but obviously in our hotels. And I'm not as familiar with the restaurants, but the numbers of people coming into Portsmouth and, staying in our hotels and coming into our stores has been a huge decrease. Yeah.
Further questions from the committee? So,
Yes.
Senator.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First for you, I must say, this is a fun committee. I just.
We aim to please.
When I talk roads and bridges, we don't have these conversations. And when I tell my grandsons tonight I met a toy maker.
Toy maker, toy
Yeah,
seller.
everything's gonna be a plus.
He'll embellish. He's a polymath.
You can call us whatever.
Yeah.
I've been called a toy whisperer, if
Yeah.
you'd like to use that. Yeah.
When I get home, I'm also a small business owner, a convenience store. We have so many concerns what was going to happen. We heard these numbers, 145%, but we haven't seen those develop. And I'm wondering when, and I appreciate you saying some of your suppliers are being upfront with you. I'm wondering have you seen that 145%, or I just know there were threats of very large and they came down to 25%. I'm just wondering if there's follow-up. I understand trades aren't coming back to you. Do
In
you
some
have any
cases,
thought on that?
excuse me, yeah. In some cases, yes. And honestly, I don't know if I haven't really done the math with, but what I've seen is just examples of, when we buy something for wholesale, there have been 20% increases, which then means, of course, the retail,
Sure.
So that's really as close as I can get. I haven't done that math, but I'd say it's across the board, other than we are a bookstore as well, and those haven't been impacted.
Thank you,
in that
ma'am.
way.
So I'll just throw this out there. So
Yeah.
as you may or may not know, I happened to be meeting with the Canadian Trade Consulate
Oh.
last week.
Okay.
And we had, Bernadette and I had a great conversation.
Mhm.
And the issue was around tariffs that we were discussing. We were talking about lumber at the time. So my question though is that would it surprise you to know that while everybody was all up in arms at the beginning of 25 with the tariffs that were instituted and retaliatory tariffs that foreign countries did on us, but like in Canada, they repealed most of all their retaliatory tariffs. Once it settled, once we figured out what it was going to look like.
Right, I do remember.
And that a lot of countries are also repealing and reducing retaliatory tariffs for stuff moving from the foreign country into the United States. Would that surprise you to learn that this is all in flux right now?
I guess, yeah, a little bit, but I appreciate the new information. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking on your behalf. Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Excited to hear about your business.
Thank.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on Senate Bill 636? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on Senate Bill 636 and move on to Senate Bill 637. I'll open the public hearing on Senate Bill 637 and recognize Senator Rebecca Perkins-Cook.
I had to travel really far to do this presentation, so I hope you guys
I apologize.
appreciate it.
Rebecca, I apologize. Would you mind? I didn't ask Lauren to come up if she wanted to on that last bill.
That's
I forgot.
true. You
She
did
was the
mention
last
that.
one.
No problem.
DRA.
I don't.
So Lauren, we're going to ask you just to come up and how do I want to handle this? You can speak on both bills. How's that?
Well, I only came up
Wait,
with
the
the
last
stuff for
bill, I
one
forgot
bill.
to have Lauren, before I closed it, speak on 636. So I'm going to let her speak on 636. She was signed up and I forgot to have her come over.
That's
and speak.
okay. Good morning. For the record, my name is Lauren O'Sullivan. I'm a senior financial analyst at the Department of Revenue Administration. And I'm here today to speak on SB 636. Though it's the amendment that came out today, I have not seen it yet, and it sounds like it is addressing, thank you, many of the issues that I was going to testify on this morning. So I will pass around the hard copies of the bill analysis that we had sent out, if anyone, for paper. And I think really the only thing I didn't hear addressed, and it's more of it's not a big deal, but we do have a tax expenditure report, and I know in the original bill, it was asking for a separate report on the tax expenditure for this credit, so we thought it would just be easier to amend RSA Chapter 71C to include that credit. But we do not take a position on the bill. Okay.
Questions for DRA? So I just have, administratively, how much of a nightmare is this going to be to administer, trying to validate, you know, to evaluate invoices, to evaluate and figure out? My question is, how much of a, is this going to be work okay? Is this going to be a nightmare?
So I can get back to you with an answer for that.
Okay.
I understand how to do the proration for the credit, and that's not difficult, but the proofs that we need, I'm not involved in that part. So I'd have to pick the brains of our taxpayer services. Okay.
My question was going to be how much of not a nightmare. I will hold that.
I
back
offered it
for
both ways.
I don't know.
Well, once we see the amendment, that
You
might
got
shed
that?
some. I just received one, so that great.
Great,
Thank you.
Any other questions? Shake it. Great. Now you can go back up. Rebecca.
Okay, 637. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee. For the record, I'm Senator Rebecca Perkins Cuoco, Senate District 21, current representing Durham, Lee, Madbury, Newcastle, Newfields, Newington, Newmarket. I have all the news in Portsmouth. I'm here today to introduce Senate Bill 637, which I have titled the Eat Local Act. This establishes a business profits tax credit for grocery stores and other food retailers which purchase at least 10% of their products from local registered New Hampshire farms. This bill serves to both support and stimulate the 4,000 farms across our Granite State, but also improve the quality and local connection of the goods sold in our markets and grocery stores. Most farms here in New Hampshire are family-owned small businesses running on thin margins. This proposal would help ensure that their goods are affordable, do not go to waste, and are enjoyed by a wider audience thanks to their increased presence in more traditional grocery stores. And we know that food affordability is a major piece of the affordability for working families that make up the core of our economy. I can say with 3 little baby bird mouths to feed, buying strawberries and other things every week gets expensive. Typically, much of the produce you see on the shelf when you shop in Market Basket, Shaw's, or Hannaford's are either imported or transited. This drives up costs, deteriorates freshness and nutritional benefit, and fails to support our local hardworking farmers. New Hampshire also enjoys an incredible food independence, which we certainly were able to benefit from during COVID, but could better support during all times. By offering retailers this voluntary tax credit to purchase from local farms instead, this will help farmers, help the consumer, and help the grocery store. As a condition of accepting the tax credit, retailers should have at least 10% of their inventory sourced from local farms and will be expected to lower the price of that food by 10%. This ensures our farmers are supported and also that all working families can enjoy fresh local produce, meat, eggs, and other staples. The tax credit applied to the business profits tax would be equal to the 10% of the total amount paid to local farms for qualifying local products and can be carried for up to 5 consecutive tax periods. Businesses will be expected to document what registered farm they purchased from, the total amount purchased, and just each farm that is on this registry would sort of provide documentation that they are registered with the BEA. So I thank you for your time. Look forward to additional questions and, emphasize again that this is sort of a voluntary structure that we could see help lead to more local food in our grocery stores. I welcome any questions.
Questions for the senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a lot of our grocery stores now already buy local. I know Market Basket and Hannaford will put up signs when, during the summer months when they're buying local. So those existing stores that are already providing that will now get a tax break for the same service.
Well, I mean, so we want to provide an incentive for, perhaps there's increased purchasing, although, them doing that on their own is great. And then I think it's also important to note that, obviously the cost of food is important and we want to make sure, we're maintaining that New Hampshire advantage where our cost of living here is competitive. And so I think being able to sort of make sure the savings they would receive is passed on to our consumer is an important piece of it too.
Thank you.
Thank
Follow
you.
up?
What?
That last part, how do we make sure that they're passing on that savings?
Yeah, so as a condition of the tax credit, the retailers would be expected to lower the price of that local food by 10%. So it'd be kind of a corresponding incentive tax credit that goes with sort of the reduced revenue.
Okay.
And you have a questioning look on your face.
I
Feel
know,
free
I
to
know.
ask the
I
next
might not be
question.
explaining
That was still not like making them do it. It was more like in your response, it sounded more of we would have an expectation of that instead of like is there a follow up to make sure that they're passing that savings on?
I think that obviously there would have to be some rulemaking that goes along with this, but the intent would be that sort of in order to qualify for the credit, you're sort of providing evidence that you've reduced the price of that food.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Senator, go ahead. McConkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a big believer in buy local. In my own arena, we've expanded those items greatly. Those items are also come at a greater cost. Go buy a tomato down at the farmer's market. I don't get many, but they're wonderful. So we offer them. So just explain to me line 3031. Purchase 10% of a total annual product inventory by cost. I'm not a member of this committee very often. By cost, does that mean only buy that item? So if I'm buying tomatoes or offering tomatoes for sale in the store, 10% of them have to be of that, or is that 10% of all of my produce in the store?
Yeah, I think I would envision it as more of the latter, but I'm certainly open to the feedback of, anyone, including yourself, in terms of how we structure this the best way. I am in conversation with Hannaford about sort of how, what structure might make sense from their perspective, but it was envisioned to be flexible for the business so that, if produce is a big part of your business or meat is a big part of your business, that that you can count that against sort of total cost for your inventory.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions from the
So, I mean, just looking through this, no business model is being changed. It's completely voluntary. It supports small businesses if they choose to take advantage of this, and it could potentially lower grocery prices.
Correct.
Right.
I just have one question. Why BEA and not Department of Agriculture, who registers farms and manages farms?
Oh, well, that could be a great idea. I welcome
did you
your
have a
input,
question?
Senator.
Did you have any discussion with Commissioner Jasper?
I didn't. The last time I talked to Commissioner Jasper, it was about how we are actually distant cousins, believe that or not. But
Everybody's
that's a great
distant cousins.
suggestion. Yeah, I know. It's probably
To go back
true.
far enough.
Well, when you have the name Perkins, you got a lot of them. But no, that's a great suggestion. I'd be very open to that.
Great. Anything else for the senator? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lauren, come on back up. I won't forget you this time.
Good morning, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, my name is Lauren O'Sullivan. I am Senior Financial Analyst at the Department of Revenue Administration. We do not take a position on this bill. However, I just come today with a few technical questions and concerns that we want to bring up. And the first being, as drafted, the legislation does not specify a price to which the price reduction is to be applied to the grocer. So we suggest clarifying language be added to specify the benchmark against which the reduction is to be measured. If it is intended that the reduction be applied to the local farm suggested retail price, assuming one exists, the DRA suggests that it might be helpful to have this information collected as part of the local farm registry. Also, as written, the DRA would interpret the proposed legislation to require that products be purchased and sold during the same taxable period in order to qualify for the credit. Products purchased in one tax period and sold in another would not qualify, nor would products purchased but not sold due to spoilage, expiration, inventory reduction, donation, and the like. If it is intended that those products also qualify for the credit, the DRA suggests that the language be adapted accordingly. And finally, the proposed legislation does not specify the first taxable period in which this credit would apply. So we do suggest adding clarifying language that's such as taxable periods ending on or after December 31st, 2027. That's the first calendar year period after the effective date of this proposed legislation. And it also would give time, whether it's Business and Economic Affairs or another agency, to set up that local farm registry for us to work with. So if there are any questions, I'm willing to take them or pass along.
I had a question for you about one of your comments. I was just reading that, and I can bring this offline, but in terms of the spoilage or expiration or inventory reduction, I was just kind of wondering, like, is there some sort of depreciation like concept, that could sort of account for some of that, in terms of being able to sort of account for things within one taxable period, or maybe there's something you could just carry forward.
So that is something that we can take offline.
sure.
I don't have an answer to that right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to ask Mark a question. Because you run a retail shop like this. So I guess my question to Rebecca's point, if a store buys product, they buy 100 pounds of tomatoes, they only sell 30 pounds of tomatoes, throw away 70 pounds of tomatoes or donate to the local church because it's just at the edge of its spoilage life and someone else might want to take a risk. How do you account for that in your inventory and in your books? Is that a write-off, spoilage, and just lost product, or how do you guys deal with that?
Thank you. We deal in a much smaller quantity than Hannaford or anyone else. And people are usually surprised to see the product introduced into a convenience market. We just call it a loss and throw it out the door.
But on your books, how do you account for it? It's
I
a
would
loss.
have-
It's a lost revenue.
I don't know. It's such a small percentage of what we're doing. I'm not sure we even calculated into it.
Thank you. Any further questions for Lauren? Seeing none.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Anybody else who wants to speak on Senate Bill 637? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on Senate Bill 637 and move on to our last bill, Senate Bill 638.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Senator Rebecca Perkins Quoker, representing District 21, comprising Portsmouth and the surrounding towns. And I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 638, colloquially called Repeal the Tariff Tax on Small Businesses. So this bill establishes a small business tariff stabilization fund to support the needs of small businesses. Since we've already had such an eloquent speaker on this topic this morning, I'm not going to go into everything, but just a couple relevant facts here. I think this is the tariffs are affecting our businesses across the state. We obviously heard from Ms. Brenneman this morning, but BEA Commissioner has stated that Canadian tourism has declined about 30%, which results in lower projected meals and rooms tax revenue, which means local property taxes have to make up the difference. And so there's a lot of different competing things that are happening to our small businesses. And I think overall what we've seen is the tariffs are going to increase household costs about 19%. And so business owners aren't exempted from that. Last year we saw CEO of C&J come in. We saw the CEO of Bensonwood Homes and Unity Homes about just sort of some of the concerns with tariffs in 2025. And so I think just recognizing that small businesses are so important to our New Hampshire economy, that there's their source of wages for many of our families. You know, those families have kids at home that they got to take care of. I think during COVID, as was mentioned, we sort of saw a similar stabilization program called the Main Street Relief Fund, where we sort of recognized it was a time of uncertainty, and we want to make sure our small businesses are there on the other side. And so they represent a lifetime of work. It seems like a small thing we can do to just create a short-term bridge and make sure that we're keeping our small businesses here in New Hampshire. So I'll leave it at that.
Questions for the senator? Seeing none, you got off the hook.
Thank you.
Jody, come on up. You're back.
I really I feel like what we covered earlier. Oh, hello. Turn it on. Yes, definitely. Sorry. Yeah. I would love some guidance into how I can expand upon what I've already talked about. What would be helpful for this bill in particular, or proposal in particular, to give you any more insight as to what I've experienced and heard from our fellow retailers.
I just want to give you the opportunity. You've heard a bunch of conversation.
Yeah.
If it spurred any other thoughts in
Yes.
your head
Oh,
that you
that's
might
great.
have wanted to share.
I appreciate
Or
it.
if members had any additional questions, they might have, again, same reason, spurred a conversation and to talk.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
feel like I've
is there
learned a
any-
little bit more just in your last information. So.
Any questions for Jody? Seeing none.
Okay,
Thank you very
well,
much.
thank
Is there anybody else like to speak on Senate Bill 638? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on Senate Bill 638. And we're going to take a brief recess. We'll be back at 11:20.
Okay.
So you got a couple minutes, bio break, coffee, whatever you need. And Victoria Muck, we see you in my office.
I welcome the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so for further discussion, Senator Sullivan.
Yeah, and I thank Senator Waters for bringing this forward. I just think there were still some questions. It wasn't quite ready. So I think if we can send it to interim study and work out the kinks on this, we'll have a much better product.
Yeah, thank you for that motion. I do think he sort of had an intent to bring back an amendment as soon as next week. So I don't know if you guys are open to waiting for him to possibly bring forward something that's going to address your concerns. But I do think this is important. It's an important support to our workforce, which our small businesses are asking for. And so would love to see something like this happen sooner rather than later.
So for my comment on this bill is that, again, we just established a Granite Patron of the Arts program in the Commission Council of the Arts. I'll be honest with you, it's been pulling teeth with them to try to get, I have 2 donors that want to give money, and it's been pulling teeth just to get the documentation necessary for the donors. So I think to throw another program out there when it can't even get the program we created 6 months ago up and running, is problematic. And the other bottom line is, again, to Sal, the council, it's regardless of whether we pass this bill or not, their bylaws are still going to have to be changed to allow for donations, no matter whether we pass this or not. And they're going to voluntarily do this. They can do a roundup program on their ticketing on the way out. They can do a $1 donation to the Council of the Arts on the way out. They don't need a single law to allow any organization, whether you're 1 to 2,500 or one up to 10,000 up at Bank of New Hampshire, the largest venue we have in the state. They could already do this if someone just approaches them and asks them to and works through the process with them. So for me, I think that it's an unnecessary move right now to do this and create a fund and give another project to the Council of the Arts. Let's let them work through what they have. Let them see if we have any of these venues that self-voluntary to come up and offer this opportunity to their patrons of the individual venue to supply this fund. So for me, I like the idea in concept, but I think that it's not ready for prime time. And even if he had given me another bill, because of the fact we're still working through the Granite Patron of the Arts program, I think that needs time to mature and see what's going on.
Okay.
So.
I would agree with my colleague that I think the prime sponsor asked for a little bit of time. It's January. We got all the time in the world. And, we're in this position because we cut funding for the arts. We need to help the arts program. I have the Colonial Theater in Keene, and we desperately need help there. I think this bill has good bones. I think the prime sponsor had fixes for what you were concerned about. I think with a little more time, we could get there to make this the right bill, and I would just ask for that time.
Any further comments? Seeing none. Motion on the floor is interim study. All those in favor of interim study, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Objection to consent?
Yeah, I'm Jack. I think the prime sponsor would want to speak on this.
Okay, so we won't move it on. We won't put it on consent. He always has the right to take it off. If we agree to put it on consent. The one thing I love about the Senate is just one person can say, I want to talk about this bill and pull it off consent. So the question is, do we want to default it over to consent and let him pull it?
I'd still prefer not consent. I think you'd want
That's
to
fine.
address the concerns he had originally.
That's fine. Next up is, Senator Sullivan, will take it up. Made the motion. Next up is Senate Bill 634, enabling municipalities to adopt the municipal occupancy. I recognize Senator Sullivan for a motion.
I make a motion of ITL.
Great, I'll second that motion. Would like to speak to your motion?
I made my comments already when the senator presented the bill. I really think that this could backfire and shoot the municipalities in the foot. People are tired of being nickel and dimed to death, and the more fees that you see lining up when you're attempting to book a room, I think it's going to turn people away. And we also have, again, the meals and rooms tax, and that shared portion goes back and should be used by the towns and cities in this way.
Thank you for your comments, Senator. I do think ultimately, whether a city or town chooses to enact this is their choice and their strategy. If you felt like it would backfire, then that's something they can consider if we gave them the choice. I think what we're hearing from our cities and towns over and over again is that they just have less funds to do their work with, and that's affecting whether they can hire public safety. It's affecting whether there are teachers to teach our children. You know, I know this is often characterized as an increase of 104% increase to cities and towns, but 104% of not much is still not much. So I think that what we're hearing is they want more independence. They want the ability to take care of themselves. They're not asking for anything from the state but a blessing. And so given all the arguments we heard in favor of this and the way that it would lower property taxes for our local property taxpayers, you know, I would still remain opposed to killing this bill.
Yes. So my only, I support the ITL. Again, Portsmouth was given $1.1 million more over 2020, and they didn't earmark a single dollar to fix whatever tourism problems they've done. And it comes directly from tourism, from the very people they're complaining about. They're now saying, "But we want more," and they already get $1.1 million more just in 5 years. And they've earmarked nothing. So it's about them setting priorities, municipalities setting priorities on when this money comes back from a given source, especially tourism. We do it for roads and bridges. Money comes in from roads and bridges. They have to use it for roads and bridges. But they're choosing not to. The state could force that, I suppose, and say that, hey, we take a percentage of area of your rooms and meals tax you must use to fix this tourism issue. But I don't think that applies because we have towns that have no tourism. They're just pass-through towns that don't have bed and breakfasts, but they have to go through that town to get there. But they get the money so they can help all taxpayers across the state. So again, I think this squares fall squarely. And again, the one comment was made. These hotels already pay property taxes, would in theory take care of law enforcement, right? And so I just don't see it. I don't see the need for this. I think it's just another grab, and we always talk about surprise fees that show up, and here we are going to add another surprise fee on a whether it's we're talking about concert tickets or we're talking about now hotel stays. We're going to add a surprise fee. I think it's inappropriate. I think it's not necessary. I think towns just need to again go back and low tax as a result of low spending. So, Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. You looked to me earlier. I'm don't take as strong a attitude on this as with the no. I think the time's going to come. There were some questions I heard from that small bed and breakfast operator. Like I said, I'm not opposed to this, but I think the timing's wrong. I think I want to be assured that the record keeping, how it's going to be done, and I'm more sensitive to small operators on how they're going to track that and how much more time it's going to take. So I'm a no today.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. The motion on the floor is ITL made by Senator Sullivan, seconded by myself. All those in favor of ITL say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Consent or no?
Oh, no, I think Senator Prentice is going to want to talk to this. Thank you.
Next up is Senate Bill. I'll take it out. Next one is Senate Bill 636 FN establishing credits for qualifying small businesses against documented tariff-related costs. I recognize Senator Sullivan for a motion.
It's so hard, isn't it? Thank you. I make a motion of ITL.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by ITL on Senate Bill 636. Would you like to speak to your motion?
It's just, I think some of these bills were created, I'm not sure, but when there was a lot of uncertainty in the market and the tariffs, and things have settled quite a bit over the last few months. I just don't think these bills are necessary.
Anybody else wish to speak?
So, well, thank you for that. Being a small business owner, there's still extreme uncertainty. We also heard from one of the speakers that she hears what's going to affect her business from the news, not from the state of New Hampshire, not from the government, but from the news. And that is not a reliable place to get information from. And we have such misinformation out there and no guidance. It's difficult to run a business that way. Broad tax cuts don't help small businesses. Targeted relief helps small businesses, and that's what this bill does. It's clear in the amendment how we administer this, who it goes to, documented related cases on tariffs, things like that. New Hampshire's a great state to do businesses. There's no denying that. So, but if we don't start helping our small businesses, we are going to lose them, and that's what this bill does. So I would argue against the ITL, and I would support another motion if we're up for that.
Any further discussion? Being done, the motion on the floor is ITL offered by Senator Sullivan, seconded by Senator McConkey. All those in favor of ITL signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
I won't even ask about consent, and I'll take it out. Next up is Senate Bill 637 FN, and I recognize Senator McConkey for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to offer interim study for Senate Bill 637 and have a moment to speak to it when it's appropriate, sir.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Senator McConkey, seconded by Senator Sullivan for interim study on Senate Bill 637, and you're recognized to speak on your motion.
Thank you. I enjoyed this conversation on this. I think it has merit. I think there's more work to be done. I very much like seeing more farm product. This whole conversation about SNAP, we're doing quite a few things. I think it does nothing but benefit our people, our homeowners, our families in New Hampshire. So I do not want to kill it at this point in time, but I think interim study would be the best way to go.
Further discussion?
Yeah, thank you. I would hope to work with anyone who has concerns over this to get it passed now because, because New Hampshire families are struggling with food affordability now. This is one way at the state level that we could provide some relief for that. And so I would hope that we could work together on that. This is a bipartisan effort based on the co-sponsors. So, I think looking at creative ways to stabilize our farms is also important because I think having a diversity of economy here in New Hampshire is really important, and the way that we sort of support different industries and direct things is important. And so I think there's a role for the state to play here. Look forward to the conversation, when we study the bill further, but I do think acting now during session or as soon as we can is what families really need.
Further discussion?
I just want to echo that. I want to kind of parrot what my colleague just said. It does nothing but help the people. So I don't think we need to study helping the people. I think we need to act on helping the people. And my colleague introduced a hell of a bill that has real impact right now. And if there's something wrong in the bill, we don't need to interim study it. We can bring an amendment right now or during this time. We don't need to interim study it. We can pass this right now. So I'm against the interim study.
So my comment is, I'll be happy to work with you, Rebecca, and do a true interim study, not just a polite death, but do a true interim study and work towards a bill that is usable. I think there were some concerns about, one of the questions we had was sale price was
Yeah.
one of the questions. So
Yeah.
from Market Basket or grocery store A buys a tomato from farm 1 and it sells it for $1, but however, grocery store B buys from farm 1 and it buys it for $1, it sells it for $1.10. Do we now create a problem with the equity and they lower it by 10%? One's getting lowered by 10 cents, one's getting lowered by 11 cents. And while both lowering is good, for the purposes of tax policy, that's problematic, right? And how we address that. And so for me, it was some of the uncertainties about the sale price, whether it's in the Department of Agriculture, which already maintains a list of our farms. And so I think there's an answer here. I actually think there's an answer that goes with both you and your SNAP bill here that could potentially create some synergy to encourage purchase of fresh produce from New Hampshire versus sugary drinks, right? And so I think there's some synergies there that could possibly happen in a bill that would make that would incentivize those kind of activities and make our New Hampshire citizens healthier and food more affordable. But I don't think this is the vehicle right now for it in the model in which it's driven. So I'll be happy to truly work with you on over the break when we get through this session to see what we can do for next year.
I appreciate the spirit. I do think we could work on that now, but understood.
All right, motion is interim study made by Senator McConkey, seconded by Senator Sullivan. The motion is interim study. All those in favor of interim study say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. And Victoria, would you mind taking that note?
I do not mind. I'm gonna stick it in your hand. No, I'll take it
Yeah,
right now.
you'll take it. Last bill is Senate Bill 638, relative to the establishment of small business tariff stabilization fund. I recognize Senator Sullivan for a motion.
I would like to make a motion of ITL.
Second.
It's been moved by Senator Sullivan for ITL, seconded by Senator McConkey, and we're open for discussion. Senator.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot of eloquent comments on tariffs here today. For me, I hear the argument from you guys that things have settled out. Where things have settled out is a 19% cost increase to New Hampshire families on average. So this is the tariffs are making life more unaffordable for New Hampshire families. This is a small way that we could keep our small businesses open, help our New Hampshire families who depend on their wages to afford the cost of living here. Again, this is basically modeled on something that was done during COVID under the Sununu administration. And so one would hope that in times where forces come from outside New Hampshire to make life harder for Granite Staters, we could put our voters and our residents first and make sure we're working together to protect them against the effects of that. So here was an idea for us to do that. I think, again, doing nothing, we're going to see the closure of small businesses. We have already seen that last year, and we'll continue to see it, which is a real loss to the New Hampshire economy.
Further discussion? So my concern again on this bill is that we know that tariffs are settling down. We predicted that back when we were doing revenue projections. We had this whole discussion about back at the beginning of last year, we were trying to figure out how tariffs are going to play it out. And back then it was all doom and gloom, that we thought tariffs are going to ruin the entire economy. Everything was going to fall apart and the world is going to end. However, we also felt that by the end of this year, tariffs would be settled out. Businesses would have more certainty, which I think they do, way more than they did in March of last year. Businesses have more certainty. We see countries like Canada reducing retaliatory or removing retaliatory rates. The one conversation about China and the tariffs on China, I don't really care. I'm not inclined to give business tax credits to companies that are doing business with China and giving them their tax revenue because they're paying, and incentivizing people to buy from China and increasing those tax rates. So again, on its face, while I recognize, I think the 19% increase isn't allocated strictly to tariffs. We had 9% inflation last year, right? That is driving up costs that are still falling into our economy. It's not just because it's 9% right now doesn't mean a product is being sold 6 months from now isn't affected by that 9% tariff when the product was made and the cost of that. So I think that there's still a lot of shaking out, whether it's relative to inflationary costs, interest costs, or tariffs, and that the jump into this pool right now would be inadvisable.
Agree.
So. All right, the motion is ITL made by Senator Sullivan, seconded by Senator McConkey. All those in favor of ITL signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. 3-2.
Consent, right?
You can put this one on consent.
There's been a motion by Senator Sullivan to go on consent. All those in favor of consent say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And Sonia, I'll take this one up. Right. Any further business to come before us in executive session?
No other Democratic bills for you to act on.
Well, we have one next week. There is one I could. I chose not to. I was being polite. So next week we meet at 9 o'clock. For those that are coming, we have 6 bills. Do know we will be having another meeting after that because we have at least one late file bill that's coming from Ways and Means. We have one bill that was sent over by the House Ways and Means Committee we have to address. On HB this year, and so we will on the tentatively right now on the 28th, the following Wednesday, we're going to meet and see where we are. Like I said, I only know of one other bill that's going for late filing right now, 15 that I know about.
So we're done after the 28th.
Assuming we accept everything, there may be some bills that we want to work on that need amendments. Like I'm bringing an amendment to my charitable gaming bill already. And so there's some bills that based on discussion but I think we're gonna have everything ready by the 28th and have everything ready to rock and roll is my guess. I just don't, late filing bills, I don't know what that looks like yet. So until I know what those number of bills and what that looks like, we could be done on the 28th. Yes. That's the goal I set. So for the committee. All right. With that be done, I entertain a motion to come out of exec.
Second.
I need someone to make it.
I'd like the motion to come out of executive session.
It's been moved and seconded to come out of exec. All those in favor of coming out of the exec session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're out of executive session. The business of the day being done, we are adjourned.